Welcome to episode 28 of Storm the Norm, the fortnightly podcast where we pick up norms that come in the way of businesses succeeding in a disruptive world. I am Narayan.
And I'm Anisha Motwani.
Storm the Norm is brought to you in association with Grant Thornton Bharat. On to today's episode now. Anisha, a few weeks ago, after our last episode with the crypto expert Jonathan Karas, I had bought a bubble blower. You remember those things, right? Primarily to play with the new puppy at my home. And he was super excited to chase them down. He would run after the bubbles and bite into them, only to end up puzzled about where they mysteriously disappeared each time he got one.
That sounds like super fun, Narayan.
It was, and it made me realize that it had been a long time since I had encountered bubbles outside of all of the talk on the Web3 bubble that seems to have enveloped the whole world of business and tech.
That's so true about me too, Narayan. We only hear about biosecure bubbles, crypto bubbles, every wave of a VC-funded bubble around fintech, ad tech, health tech, and just go on and on.
Exactly, Anisha. It made me go back to an idyllic time with our childhood where we could be silly without judgment, trying to blow bigger bubbles than our friends, either with soap water or more commonly with chewing gum. And it left me wondering, is there a place for chewing gum bubbles in the Web3 bubble world?
Oh, so that is pun intended, huh?
It is.
So great question, Narayan. Even if we fast forwarded from our childhood to a few years ago, chewing gum and allied confectionery categories was such an integral part of everyday conversations, especially in the world of branding and marketing. Some of the most memorable advertising has come from this category, giving us cultural catchphrases such as "Dimag ki batti jala de," "Dobara mat puchna," "Zuban pe rakh lagam," and so many others.
Indeed, Anisha, and I know that we are talking about the confectionery and chewing gum category as kind of a shorthand for other low-cost, low-value, impulse-driven categories, not necessarily only these. And so in that context, it makes me a little sad to say this, but do you see how we're talking about these categories in the past tense? And that's what brings me to today's norm. In a world that's all about the Web3 bubble, there's no room for chewing gum bubbles.
Or similar equivalent low ticket, low value impulse categories.
Yeah.
So that's a big and provocative statement to make about a category and about large FMCG companies that has built not just a big customer base by itself, but I dare say is also responsible for creating the kind of unparalleled mom and pop retail footprint in India that very few other categories can.
It is, Anisha, and I don't say it lightly. The world of brands today seems to be about one or more of the following three things: purpose, planned purchase journeys, and pivots enabled by disruptive tech. So where's the place for a frivolous, impulse-driven, unchanging product category in this world?
When you put it like that, it does seem difficult for chewing gums and other impulse categories such as candy and confectionery to find relevance in today's world.
Happily for me, though, I can pause after posing this existential question for chewing gums and other similar low-cost, low-value, impulse-driven categories, because our guest expert today is best placed to storm this norm. Rajesh Ramakrishnan is the managing director of provocative and Mail India, makers of iconic confectionery brands such as Centerfresh, Mentos, Happy Dent, Alpenliebe, and Chupa Chups, among others. And today's norm is not just an existential question, but a practical one that he's been tackling at the helm of Perfetti even before the pandemic, but also through it. Rajesh, welcome to Storm the Norm.
Thank you, Rajesh, for joining us on this Saturday to storm this particular norm. And it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us. And I'm going to jump straight into the norm, Rajesh.
Yeah, thanks, Anisha, for having me on this session, and look forward to an engaging session.
Yes. Let me just read out the norm that I would like to storm with you. Okay. It goes something like this. In a world that's all about the Web3 bubble, there's no place for chewing gum bubble, pun intended. What I mean by this is that in a tech-enabled world, enamored by the insanity of metaverse, cryptos, NFTs, etc., how are simple, almost cute impulse businesses like yours staying relevant?
Yeah, and I think that's a great norm to storm, and I like the pun as well. So very interesting. And you're absolutely right. If you look at it, our category, confectionery category, is part of a larger impulse category, and it is all about simple joys, right? So you want to make your kid happy or make yourself happy. You end up popping a chewing gum or eating an Alpenlibe candy, and that's how you get simple joys at very affordable price points. However, what is also happening is that as the categories get fragmented, as consumer choices multiply, one of the important things for brands in the impulse category is also to figure out ways in which the brand can play a more meaningful role in the life of the consumer without losing the true essence of simplicity and joy, right? So you don't want to lose that, but at the same time, how can you play a more meaningful role? And I'll just illustrate this to two examples.
Okay.
If you take a brand like Center Fruit, right? All of us have grown up eating Center Fruit chewing gum, and the brand essentially, used to be positioned on, it is so tasty that your tongue can't stop wagging, right? So it used to be on that positioning. But as the brand has evolved, one of the things we realize is consumers are also evolving, and we need to find ways of them playing a more meaningful role in the life of consumers. So the Center Fruit positioning is now all around mood transformation.
Okay.
So when you're alone, for example, when a kid is studying for his or her exam, and you are in a state of either neutral state or a negative state, you want to just pick yourself up and transform your mood and uplift your mood. You pop in a Center Fruit and link to the product truth of Fruit Splash, right? It also sort of gives you a splash and uplifts your mood and transforms your mood. So there is a integrated approach of product truth linking up to a higher order need, which then makes the brand have a more meaningful role in the life of the consumers. So I think that's the way we are trying to see how to stay relevant without losing the core essence of simplicity and joy. And I'd also like to sort of share one more example, a very different kind of example, but again, I think very relevant. If you take a brand like Happy Dent, right? All of us have grown up seeing the Happy Dent Palace ad, which came about 20 years ago.
What an iconic ad that was.
Absolutely, and which won us a Cannes, actually. The way Prasoon and team had conceptualized that ad, it was a brilliant ad. And it was all about single-mindedly talking about white teeth, sparkling smile, right? Now, what we have done is 20 years later, we have taken that same core thought of sparkling smile, but we have taken it to the next level. So the new, the Happy Dent campaign is all about Dikha Batti Si, Kar Baat Achhi Si.
Oh, nice.
So how can you take the visual iconic of sparkling smile and use that to throw light on social issues, right?
Very interesting. So Rajesh, as I hear you say, I mean, this is a phenomenal pivot, but just to play devil's advocate, for a minute here, if is the youth, are we taking the fun out of this category and making it slightly more responsible and serious? At least some categories need to be light and bubbly and easy and irreverent. So are you observing that, the consumer, that there is a set of consumers, who miss the old fun element in these kind of categories? And,
Anisha, that's an absolutely valid question. And like I said, these categories are all about affordable treats which make me happy, right? And we can't sort of take that away because that's what consumers buy into. So even if you see a Center Fruit communication, for example, the latest communication had this young boy who was bored in a tailor shop and who has customers coming to get themselves measured for getting their clothes stitched, and he pops in a Center Fruit and he takes the measurements by doing a salsa. Right. So I think exactly, even as I'm explaining it, it makes you sort of laugh. And if you see the advertising, I'm sure you'll find it funnier. But the point is, we need to do both. And I think that's the delicate balance that brands need to walk, where you are having a larger purpose, a higher order need that you're satisfying, yet not losing that innocence, that simple joys, which are very, very inherent to the category.
Absolutely well summarized, Rajesh. I think this is what I was missing when I was hearing you say. I said, see, there are these big heavy duty brands, that carry the onus of some responsibility, and therefore they have no option but to, communicate responsibly. But here are some categories that do have the license and the freedom to have some fun. But but I hear you. You are finding ways and means of actually keeping it light and easy.
And sorry, Anisha, just to build on that point, and I think it's super critical to do that, because otherwise you have the danger of starting to preach to consumers, and then there is a dissonance with the brand, and you start losing, like I said, the core essence of simple joys, innocence, happiness. Then they start getting diluted. So we are very mindful of that, and I think it's an important aspect to keep in mind as we evolve on our communication.
So that brings me to my next point about this whole purchase behavior. Okay. Yeah. Now and COVID, obviously has accentuated that a lot more. Is your category also seeing a lot of online purchases today? Because for my understanding is that candies and bubble gums are more about impulse buying. It's almost an irrational behavior with no planned intent, whereas online buying is much more planned, it's much more rational. Consumers tend to search for information, they make comparisons before they make final decisions. And that's technically how we understand the online buying behavior. In such a place, how do you evoke impulse?
Yeah, you're spot on in your observation, and I think that's a really valid point. And I'll just, spend a minute on explaining how COVID impacted the impulse category. So if you look at it, we are very widely distributed. 7.5 million outlets is the confectionery category distribution, and we are available in 4.5 million outlets. And we directly reach about 1 million outlets on a daily basis. So it's a fairly, staggering numbers. But what happens is when the pandemic struck and when the lockdowns happened, clearly everybody's staying indoors, right? And then the drop in our sales is pretty sharp, because jo dikhta hai wo bikta hai, and that doesn't happen, and therefore our sales drops pretty dramatically. Whereas categories which have a larger in-home stocking and consumption still manage to stay afloat, because consumers are still ordering in the products as well. However, the flip side to it is when the bounce back happened, we were much faster to bounce back, because our price points are at the end of the day 1 rupee predominantly, right? So a mother doesn't.
For that. You still find some products at 1 rupee.
Exactly. And a mother wouldn't mind spending that 1 rupee to keep her child happy, irrespective of COVID or not, right? So, in that sense, I'm just giving you a context of how the category works. However, one of the things that COVID taught us was, if I were to look at a larger macro snacks category, which includes biscuits, chocolates, chips, etc., a lot of these products have managed to find their way inside the homes for a variety of reasons. One is the price point. Second is the occasions that they tap into, etc. And what we realized was confectionery, because of its price points and because of the occasion still evolving, we were struggling to get in home. So one of the conscious shifts we did was, how do I move my products from impulse anytime, anywhere to more of a planned purchase, therefore planned stocking at home, and therefore consumption at home, right? And obviously the solution for that lies in two areas. One is, do I have the right price pack combination, because that's important. And the second is, am I tapping into the relevant consumption occasions? So that was a two-pronged strategy that we adopted. Obviously it's a slow burn, it will take its own time, but we are seeing some very, very good results in slowly moving the consumers to start stocking confectionery products at home, and therefore consuming products. Let me give you a simple example. If you take a product like Alpenliebe Just Jelly, it's one of our largest selling brands. What we have done is, we've got 25% fruit pulp in the product. So it's a bit of a gatekeeper, crossing that gatekeeper barrier. And we introduce larger pack sizes. So what happens is, then automatically the pack at $20 or $50 start going into the homes of the consumer. And when the mother wants to give her kid a small treat, then there is a product which is a tasty product, and with 25% fruit pulp, which can be stocked at home, which therefore then plays a role in making a kid happy in the house.
So what percentage of your sales today, when you look at your business, would be online now?
Yeah.
I heard you say it's a slow burn.
It is a slow burn. So, pre-COVID, if you look at it, we were probably at about 0.5%, right? Very tiny numbers.
Mhm.
But over the last 2 years, I think we've moved to something like 2.5% in terms of, contribution to overall sales. And I think the important thing to note is because our denominator is so big, the 2.5% seems small, but on an absolute scale, the numbers are moving at a very nice positive clip.
So, Rajesh, besides the top line, do you feel that the margins are much better because you are selling larger packs and pricing it differently? Or do you feel that the online platforms are equally expensive or have run with similar margins?
Yeah, again, great question. I think, when you talk about the 1 rupee products, obviously you're severely limited in your pricing, right? I mean, I cannot make the 1 rupee product 1 rupee 20 paisa tomorrow.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. In that sense, there are less levers to pull in terms of, improving margins on the offline products. But when it comes to online, because we have larger pack sizes, there are many more levers that you can play with. Of course, the challenge is also that, there are other platforms that we need to support for and so on and so forth. But yes, to your point, I think there are more levers that we can play with in the online channel.
This impulse category is more about product placement, it's about shelf placement, it's about the physical stimuli, all of those things that make it an impulse category. So how does that work in the online world?
See, I think in online, what is important is, one, to get the salience of the category itself. I mean, even if you think about it for yourself, you would not probably say that, oh, I need to eat chewing gum today and let's go online and buy chewing gum. Right? So one of the things we've been trying to do is, how do we create generic, keyword searches which enhance the salience for our brands? So, for example, Center Fresh stands for fresh breath, right? So, even if you are searching for something around fresh or fresh breath, etc., while things like toothpaste might pop up, we also, do it in such a way that brands like Center Fresh pops up also, right? So, I think that's one way to do it. Second is to partner with other brands which have a stronger presence in online. So then how can we feed off them in a synergistic manner? And the third, very important, is associating with occasions. So for example, if I were to give you an example, Halloween is an occasion which is not tapped by many other categories or brands.
True.
However, it has a very strong association and relevance to the confectionery and candy space. So what we did in the last couple of years was we created Halloween packs, which are exclusive packs only for online, which sell at, like, for example, $150. So it's a ready-made pack. It looks like a bit of a pumpkin. It's got candies inside it. Mothers do need those packs during those times to give to their kids so that they can do their tick or treat and stuff. So those kind of packs we created. We partnered with people like Grofers, Blinkit now, and Amazon to see how we could create excitement around Halloween, so that when the mother is shopping for something during Halloween, these kind of things pop up. So I think it's a combination of having the right price pack, the right visibility, and tapping into occasions, which can really help us to drive the online sales.
Rural India, are you seeing any form of traction for the online purchases in that part of our country as well, especially for categories like yours?
Yeah, and I think here, the smartphone has a great role to play, right? I mean, we think sometimes rural and semi-urban areas, nothing much is happening from that perspective. But we have a very different view, because, the kids there and the youth there are really, tech savvy when it comes to using mobile. So what we also do is a lot of stuff we do around use the mobile for, let me give you an example. Chupa Chups is a brand which is targeted at teens. So we have this whole thing of, a QR code on the pack. So you just scan the QR code, you can start playing some games. And then we have tied up with Amazon where you can win gifts and vouchers from them, which is again coming on your phone, right? So the entire chain end to end can actually happen through your phone. And the way we also make sure that the product is integrated is the games that you have are like snakes, which, for example, one of our products is a belt-shaped product, right? The belt is the snake, and then you play a game and you win. So the product and the brand is also very, very tightly integrated with the game. Like Bytes is a game. Bytes is a product. We have a treasure hunt game where the bytes, you have to find the bytes and you can win some points and so on and so forth. So I think rural, to your point, it doesn't matter rural or urban. I think the mobile phone has really unlocked a lot of opportunities. And I think it's really about how we leverage technology in a very engaging manner, which will allow us to unlock that opportunity.
That brings me to today when you talk to kids and you talk about candies, they'll say Candy Crush. It's all about just moving them into this whole virtual, surreal world where I started. So how do you change the narrative for these kind of children?
See, end of the day, as you know, also as a brand, we have to be where the consumer is. Yeah. So today, unfortunately, the number of kids probably playing gully cricket and, coming out and doing those outdoor activities to have come down to an extent. And they have got into stuff like gaming. And, if you look at the numbers on gaming, they're staggering and in a way a bit sad also, right? Like kids are spending about 7 to 8 hours in a week gaming in the pandemic world. Okay, we have to be responsible as a brand. But what we then do is, can we allow them to play games, also learn something in the process, right? So we also, create games which have a little bit of a learning associated with it, whether it is in terms of, learning something new or dexterity or whatever, but ensuring that the fun is still not taken out of it. They are still, learning something, yet we are being where they are spending their time. So I think that's the key thing to keep in mind.
No, Rajesh, it's been a very, very engaging and interesting conversations because as I heard you, I realized that you have pivoted the category and changed the narrative at several levels to stay relevant. Technology is here to stay. Digitization is here to stay. Consumers are evolving. Children are evolving. And how do you make businesses which are simple businesses like yours, traditional businesses in many ways stay relevant, right from the proposition to making it a higher order proposition, in line with how the youth today or the young children today are behaving, to changing price points, products, making it more relevant in terms of an online purchase, moving it from impromptu to planned for that medium, to integrating and doing stuff end to end. This has truly been an eye opener for me, because when we look back, we wonder how it's okay when you're in bigger categories like cars and durables and categories like those. They are actually meant for the online world, for the new world. But simple categories like these, they really need to change. And I think what you've done is remarkable. So thank you. This has been really an interesting conversation.
Thank you very much, Anisha. Thank you for having me on this. And it was an absolute pleasure.
So Narayan, what did you take away from everything Rajesh said?
Anisha, I actually want to go back to something our guest expert in the last episode of Storm the Norm touched upon. You remember in that episode, Jonathan Carras, the crypto expert I referred to earlier, he came from this perspective that one of the main reasons the realm of blockchain and crypto and Web3 have felt a little obscure and complex to most people is because they've been too technical and even boring for most people. He believed that making it entertaining, making it fun is critical to making it mainstream. And to me, what Rajesh said, in fact, doesn't just storm today's norm. I think it inverted brilliantly.
Tell me how.
I would say, it's easy to spot it now after having heard him. I would say it's not just that there's room for chewing gum bubbles in a world that's all about the Web3 bubble, but that the Web3 bubble could learn a lot from the world of chewing bubbles, starting with not taking itself so seriously. Purpose and planning and pivots are great and are needed, don't get me wrong. But ultimately, we need to remember that more often than not, as people, we seek fun and not just meaning with a capital M all the time. Meaning is great, we want fun also. And in a world that's gone crazy on so many dimensions, we need chewing gum bubbles at least as much, if not more, than the Web3 bubble, so that there is the right mix of fun and purpose. But what about you, Anisha? How would you storm this norm? What hacks do you have for our audience?
Yeah, even before I come to the hacks, the point that you made, I remember, Rajesh has touched upon this brilliantly and given examples of how, even though his brand moved from, fun to purposeful fun, little nuances that he introduced in the brand communication made sure that it is not he's not compromising on fun and entertainment in any way and making the category serious and boring.
Absolutely. So yeah, in that context, I'm really looking forward to the hacks that you have.
So there's so much to be said on storming this norm at a broad level, Narayan. But I'm going to focus it on a very specific part. How can an impulse category pivot to succeed in a D2C world where the rule of commerce, culture, and communications may be very different? Selling inexpensive, low-ticket impulse purchase items profitably online requires a disciplined approach to the entire business. When you sell a high-priced product, you have the ability to absorb many costs, and you can still be profitable because of your higher margins.
Indeed, Anisha. This is the biggest challenge facing various categories like candy, sweets, and others that depend on a huge distribution footprint of small retailers. I mean, these products just don't have the same margin for error.
But does that mean e-commerce or online retail are not suitable for low-value products? Should they stay away from this channel? Or are there ways to manage the costs and leverage the large buying pool of diverse customer sets to generate high profits through volumes? And here are my 5 hacks to unlock the potential of this e-commerce online retail for such categories.
I'm all yours.
The first hack is all about moving the purchase from an impulse action to a step action. So create a conscious plan to shift the purchase from low ticket, low value impulse purchase to conscious, planned, event based incidents. And this requires a big mindset shift and a dual strategy. One for physical retail and the other for e-commerce. It starts with relooking at your product and pack size. And then, of course, pricing and supply chain logistics. It's a different ballgame altogether. And that's why I mentioned mindset shift as the first barrier to overcome. Many teams in traditional businesses do not have the DNA to straddle both and see this channel as an adjunct, good to have a presence, but not of significant strategic relevance to carve out a separate holistic strategy. This is actually one of the best mediums available for such low value, low ticket categories to broaden the customer base with some exciting and creative interventions. We know digital as a medium allows you a lot of creativity and interactions with the customers. And if you see this strategically, and if you have the right product and a pack size priced appropriately, then this game is possible. And everything else then just follows.
There's so much to unpack in this one, and it's such an insightful hack, Anisha. Brands are making the same mistake here as they did with digital in the initial days, treating it as an afterthought in the beginning and then scrambling to somehow fit it into their overall strategy. I mean, it takes clear thinking and action to recognize that e-commerce can be treated as needing a distinctive focus, not just dovetailed with everything else, but a distinctive focus across all aspects of the business. This is great. What's your second hack?
The second hack is about moving the brand from a transaction-only brand to a purposeful brand. See, as it is, these categories are about transactions. You don't have change, okay, take a candy. You're standing at the counter, buying something for the household, and if there is a kid with you, he would insist, and you would say, okay, give him a candy or give him a bubble, and stuff like that. So as it is, this is a transactional category, and the online world has become even more so about transactional products, which are about short-term game of immediate purchases and cash flows than the long-term game of building name, recognition, and acquiring long-term customers. Okay. The tricky part about transactional action is that you may get a sale, but that doesn't mean you'll get repeat customers. And continually chasing new customers is more expensive than doing business with return customers. That's where branding and brand building comes in. Branding induces customers to buy things without wasting time and effort on deliberative thinking. See, in the online world, if you have to induce an impulse action, then the first barrier to cross is the brand barrier. And if you know that this is a brand that is actually top of mind for you, then you actually move to the next step of purchasing it. And remember the first hack, if this is a planned purchase, then brand has to play even a bigger role than in a transactional category or an impulse category. How do you make customers buy now and feel later? Because the trust in the brand will help you skip this whole deliberation step.
I love that phrase, Anisha. Buy now, feel later. Move over BNPL, buy now, pay later. I think that's not true. It's not your day-to-day. Here comes BNFL.
The thing is, when building your brand over time, you will eventually have a customer base that won't need transactional messages to woo them towards your products or services. Because of branding, these repeat customers already interact with and perhaps even love your company without extra incentives. This means that in the long term, you'll likely work and spend less on transactional advertising as your businesses and bottom lines grow.
Absolutely, Anisha. BNFL is such a powerful outcome that only brand building, not transactional interactions, only brand building can enable. So what's your third hack now?
It's linked to that, it's linked to this whole skipping the deliberation step, BNFL syndrome that we spoke about. Create a shopping momentum in your purchase journey. Increase the average order value. So the shopping momentum effect is about how making an initial purchase creates a psychological impulse to make additional purchase by inducing a kind of an implemental mindset. You're ready to implement. And this is a very critical step to making online sales profitable and managing the margin pressure. There are various ways in which this can be done, but for that, the first critical step is to be strategic with cross-selling and upselling and not tactical in your approach. So if you plan a good share of wallet strategy, focuses on making the purchase more attractive by bundling it with add-ons, combo packs, incentives, gifts, event-based celebration events, loyalty points to foster deeper engagement with customers. And like I said in my earlier hacks, engagement and creativity comes very naturally to this medium. You can integrate your products into several interactive activities where the customer is directly involved, something that you can never do at a mom and pop retail store, where it will always remain a transaction. You buy, you pay, you move on. But here there is so much that is more that's possible. And this has the probability to trigger an unplanned purchase, increasing the probability of making subsequent unplanned purchases.
No, I can absolutely see how social influence or cues that leverage the behavior of other users can also encourage impulsive purchases.
True, Narayan. When you sell low-cost items, another way to boost profitability is to sell more of them to each customer. That's what I meant by cross-sell, upsell. For instance, if you sell a cute, pink nail polish, you could also offer the companion, a blue one, for a friend or something, or a nail clipper that can go, along with it. Offering a buy two, get one free special is another way to boost profit. And there are many such activities that you can think of. Selling related accessory products, complementary products, is another way to bundle this and make the purchase order, not just increase the order value, but also increase the stickiness with the customer.
I think about how every time you go to a coffee shop, the person at the counter will always subtly try to upsell or cross-sell to you, either a bigger size drink or something to eat along with your drink. And it's a very shot in the dark kind of thing, just ask every customer who comes along kind of thing. But e-commerce makes this even simpler with the use of data analytics and even more effective. The now old trick of customers who bought this also bought XYZ is now so prevalent in e-commerce, right? And at its core, this is all about creating psychological impulses that you spoke about.
And it creates a kind of shopping momentum.
Absolutely. All right, then 3 down, 2 more hacks to go. What's next?
I think this is hygiene, but purchasing at low cost and managing transaction costs. This world is now famous for unit economics, but it becomes even more relevant in products which have got lower margins. Even if you've looked at a larger pack size, a bundled pack size, you still are working on with limited margins in this category. Managing your cost of goods sold is key in low cost items. So choosing to buy in larger lots, helps you to amortize additional charges such as transaction or shipping charges, or even manage a larger or negotiate a larger discount. Seemingly small transaction costs can take a large chunk of your profit. For instance, a 30 paisa swipe fee on a 10 rupees equal to 3% of your total revenue. And transaction costs that are based on percentage of your sales instead of a flat fee may be more advantageous. So always remember that, if you have to negotiate transaction costs and you are a low margin product, make sure it's a percentage and not a flat, rate, because then the denominator effect starts coming in. If you do enough volumes, a flat rate transaction processor may even save you more in the long run.
I love this one, Anisha, simply because it shows that value creation can happen not just with changes at end consumer levels, but at the site of the manufacturer-distributor interface. And with e-commerce, the opportunity to scale this is much simpler and greater. And so what's your final hack now?
So how do you reduce the customer acquisition costs? It seems like a no-brainer, but profitably selling small items also requires a strategy that lowers your customer acquisition cost. Paying per click for search engine advertising probably won't be profitable if you sell low-ticket items. Using social networking tools and doing your own search engine optimization can help drive customers at a low cost. Another strategy is to use your existing customers to drive businesses through promotions or even an affiliate program. One of the things that we don't do well is, this is a data-driven world. You have the access to your customers' data. And if we do not leverage our existing customers to drive business and use them like our own brand ambassadors to build a brand, then it's a lost opportunity. We are constantly chasing new customers, cold customers, and not paying enough to existing customers and how we can use them strategically. While these may involve discounting or paying referral fees, if the cost is less than paying for advertising, you will come out ahead.
All right, that's a lot to observe, Anisha, but also a lot of fantastic business insights in one place. I mean, from shopping momentum to buy now, feel later to step action instead of just impulsive action, moving beyond transactions to purposeful brands and reducing customer acquisition costs. This is so much to observe. It all is, when you think about it, it's intuitive. If only everybody would take them to execution. So I think it's a lot of very, very practical, usable, insightful hacks in one place here.
Thank you, Narayan.
All right. So a thought-provoking norm, a seasoned expert, and some great levers to storm the norm. There definitely is room for chewing gum bubbles in the world of the Web3 bubble.
And equivalent. Indeed, Narayan. This is a good place to wrap up episode 28 of Storm the Norm. As always, there are multiple places you can catch us on: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, and JioSaavn by just searching for Storm the Norm, and on Saregama Caravan 2.0 devices on channel 453.
This is Narayan.
And Anisha.
Signing off for now. We'll be back with a new episode shortly. Thank you and talk to you soon.